I'm gonna be real, you all saw the title of this review. I don't even know how to begin this video given what we're gonna be talking about today, it's just a lot to digest. Television specials are often a curious beast to say the least, especially comedic ones. I feel like they can either go horribly wrong or horribly right, no in between. I've made a couple of videos on Doctor Who in the past. It was one of my favourite shows as a kid because cheesy 20th mid-century science fiction for the win. The show chronicles the adventures of an eccentric alien with regenerative abilities and his usually human companions running down corridors from bins on wheels while on missions to save the universe. It also has a remake series that began in 2005. On the other hand, EastEnders is a soap opera that started airing during the mid-80s, and is still running to this day. Set in the fictional borough of Walford in East London, the show tackles various social issues in your standard soap opera fashion. I've seen bits and pieces of it over the years, but generally speaking, this kind of show isn't really my thing. For some reason, in the early 90s, someone at the BBC thought that combining these two would make a good comedy crossover, probably due to the absurdity of the premise alone. Dimensions in Time brings together several incarnations of the Doctor and many of their companions from over the years. It's a tale that defies all logic and reason, and yet is somehow charming if you like cheesy trashy media. Being a mishmash of plot threads, cameos, and dodgy dramatic acting, the special certainly makes for an experience. This strange 20-minute adventure aired as part of the BBC's Children in Need charity telethon, which features many different acts and specials, as well as part of a light entertainment series named Noel's House Party from the 90s. This specific special also happened to air during Doctor Who's hiatus between 1989 and 2005. But is Dimensions in Time your bog-standard unremarkable failed attempt at a tongue-in-cheek crossover, or is there more to its entertainment value below the surface? Let's find out. Without further ado, on with the review.
Polos is life, 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 sleep all night and then Polos is life.
The segment begins with DJ and television presenter Noel Edmonds being greeted by the Third Doctor, played by Jon Pertwee.
I've seen you in the year 2010.
Oh.
You're still on television.
Oh, am I doing serious programmes?
No, I said I travel through space and time. I don't visit Fantasy Island.
Jon Pertwee played the third incarnation of the Doctor from 1970 to 1974. He's also known for playing the titular character in the Worzel Gummidge series, which, according to my mother, scared quite a few children when it aired, as well as appearing in several Carry On films. Anyways, the pair sit down to watch it, and put on some 3D glasses. Yes, it's one of those 3D specials. The story begins with an 80s-era Who villain, the Rani, played by Kate O'Mara, gloating to her companion, Syrian, played by Samuel West, about how she has trapped different incarnations of the Doctor in a time loop in East London. After an interesting 80s remix of the Doctor Who theme song, we are greeted by the Fourth Doctor in a manner that pretty much sums up the tone for this episode.
2 of my earlier selves have already been snared in her vicious trap. The grumpy one and the flautist, do you remember them?
I like how he describes the first and second Doctors as the grumpy one and the flautist. It was a recorder, but yeah, that pretty much sums those two up. At the very least, Tom Baker is trying his best here. The Seventh Doctor, played by Sylvester McCoy, and his companion Ace, played by Sophie Aldred, materialise next to the Cutty Sark, a Victorian-era museum ship located in Greenwich. The Doctor sees that the newspaper is dated 1973, just before the Rani separates the pair via a dated transition, and Ace ends up with the Sixth Doctor, played by Colin Baker, in Albert Square, Walford. Walford resident Sanjay Kapoor, played by Deepak Verma, attempts to sell Ace some clothes at a discount, but his wife Geeta, played by Shobhu Kapoor, protests mildly before telling Ace that the clothes are going to be all the rage in 1994. With that being said, literally, the Rani moves the time loop once more, the Third Doctor being paired with the Sixth and Seventh Doctor's companion, Mel Bush, played by Bonnie Langford. I also know Langford as Violet from the 1977 Just William adaptation. Older versions of Pauline Fowler, portrayed by Wendy Richard, and Kathy Beale, portrayed by Gillian Tailford, bicker as they grow suspicious of the pair. To make matters worse, they respond that it's 2013 when the Doctor demands to know what year it is. You can get the gist of the episode. Each Doctor is paired with a companion who is meant to travel with another Doctor after each time skip. After being transported back to 1973, we get an appearance from the beloved Susan Foreman, played by Carol Ann Ford.
Precisely. I am the Doctor.
Oh, no, you're not. You're nothing like my grandfather.
Following the next time skip, fan favourite Sarah Jane Smith, portrayed by Elizabeth Sladen, is seen talking to Sharon Watts, portrayed by Letitia Dean. She spots the third Doctor, and they begin chatting about their predicament, getting closer to figuring out the truth. This displeases the Rani, and it's about time that she makes an appearance again. We can't just have the Doctors and their companions running around willy-nilly for the entire runtime. She sends in some specimens, and we see the fifth Doctor, played by Peter Davison, along with his companions, Perry Brown, played by Nicola Bryant, and Nyssa, played by Sarah Sutton, be attacked by various Who monsters, including a Cyberman, an Ogron, and a Veneer. The group try to warn Walford's Pat Butcher, portrayed by Pam St. Clement, of the oncoming danger, and she doesn't take them seriously. The Doctor says that this is because they're in different time zones, so I'm just gonna let this slide. Many other Who villains appear here. I spotted a Sand Miner robot, a Silurian, a Sea Devil, and a Time Lord. Let me know what monsters you spotted here. The Rani confronts the cornered trio in front of the Queen Victoria pub, and that marks the end of Part 1. Between Parts 1 and 2, viewers could vote between whether Mandy Salter, played by Nicola Stapleton, or Big Ron, played by Ron Tarr from EastEnders, could save the Doctor and his companion after the cliffhanger. Let's see who the audience voted for. The fifth Doctor does some kind of telepathic, telekinetic, wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey thing, and is able to transpose himself and the others into the third Doctor and Liz Shaw, played by Caroline John. Time Lords have always seemed to have some kind of vague psychic abilities, so again, I'll let this slide. For the uninitiated, Liz Shaw was the third Doctor's original companion, who only appeared in one season before being replaced by Katie Manning's Jo Grant. Shaw rushes to the Rani, and who do you think comes along to break up the scuffle?
What are you doing? Leave her alone!
If you guessed Mandy, you were right. I do wonder what Ron's version looked like though. If anyone knows where I could find that version, please let me know. Just as the Rani attempts to shoot the pair, Unit's Mike Yates, portrayed by Richard Franklin, shows up to save the day. He blasts the Rani's weapon out of her hand and drives the Doctor to safety, where he meets the Brigadier, played by Nicholas Courtney. I would be shocked if this guy didn't make an appearance, as he's definitely a fan favourite, having been part of the show since the second Doctor was on screen. Brothers Phil and Grant Mitchell, played by Steve McFadden and Ross Kemp respectively, find Romana, portrayed by Lala Ward, hiding in their garage. They understandably insist on knowing what she's doing there, and she tells them that she's looking for the Doctor.
Yeah, Dr. Leggy's the only doctor around here.
Doctor Who?
To be fair, this is a realistic reaction from the average person. I've never gotten why companions wouldn't think of the fact that your average Joe would just assume that you're talking about a medical doctor. Frank Butcher, who's played by Mike Reed, witnesses Romana be dragged into the Queen Vic, and tries to provide us with some comedic relief.
Well, I've seen him thrown out of the Vic, but never dragged in.
Back in 1973, the third Doctor explains to Victoria Waterfield who the Rani is, before going into the TARDIS and turning back into the seventh Doctor. Victoria was the guest appearance that I was most surprised at. She's played by Deborah Watling and hadn't been in the show since the 60s before this. One of my favourite companions, Leela, no not that one, Leela, played by Louise Jameson, who originally assisted the fourth Doctor, makes an appearance, explaining that the Rani attempted to clone her while she was still Romana. Ronnie has been keeping clones of specimens so that she can do her own evolutionary experiments or something, but as she has cloned Romana, she ended up taking 2 Time Lord brains instead of the human one that she needed. Ace appears again, and the Doctor tells her that he needs to override the Rani's computer so that her TARDIS is pulled into the time loop instead of his. K9, voiced by John Leeson, also shows up in the background here. They rig up some kind of timey-wimey Deus Ex Machina converter device here, and it does the work for them, with the different incarnations of the Doctor being freed from the Rani's trap. Okay, so the premise alone is pretty ridiculous, right? EastEnders is a soap opera that's pretty grounded in reality bar the melodramatics, a stark contrast to Doctor Who, a campy 20th century science fiction program. If such a crossover was presented under any other circumstance, I could easily write this off as the writers at the Beebs running out of ideas, but given that this is for a silly charity show, this combination does make sense. I will say that this is more of a Doctor Who special than an EastEnders one, and there's much less focus on the EastEnders universe compared to Who. It's more like it's a Doctor Who story that is taking place in Albert Square, rather than a true crossover episode. This could be explained by the fact that this was for the 30th anniversary of Doctor Who, which began airing in 1963, and EastEnders was a relatively recent show by comparison at the time. The effects in Dimensions in Time are about what I would expect from this era of Doctor Who. The monsters all look a little rubbery and the combat isn't super convincing. But hey, it's fun. The makeup where certain characters are meant to look older is pretty decent though. This may be due to the version that I'm watching, but the 3D effect didn't really work out for me. Ah well. I think that the performances from all of the actors here, including the cast from EastEnders, are pretty accurate to what I've seen of the characters in their respective shows, although it is a shame that the characters only get minimal screen time, given the special's short runtime. With that being said, part of this special's charm was undoubtedly due to the level of references for fans of Doctor Who. For example, all incarnations of the Doctor that could appear on screen did, and a touching tribute was paid to the first 2 Doctors, who had passed away by the early 90s, with subtle references through names and visuals. The 5th Doctor also uses a classic Who phrase that was first popularised by the 2nd Doctor.
When I say run, run. Run!
The amount of monsters that have appeared throughout the show was also a nice touch, and I really like that the viewers at home at the time were able to decide who gets to save the Doctor after the cliffhanger, with £101,000 being raised for children in need thanks to everyone who called in. This was sadly John Pertwee's final appearance as the 3rd Doctor, as he passed away 3 years after it aired in 1996, at the age of 76. It was nice that he got to appear in a tribute to the programme one last time. Now, before this special came up on my radar, I was aware of another silly special in the same vein by Comic Relief, that aired in 1999, titled The Curse of Fatal Death. With Blackadder's Rowan Atkinson as the Doctor, he faces his arch-nemesis, the Master, for the first time since that dodgy 1996 film. As the focus isn't it being a crossover, this special opts to make light of campy Who tropes, such as theatrical dialogue, convoluted time-travelling plots, and silly monsters.
Naturally, I anticipated your journey back in time, and so I travelled slightly further back, and bribed the architect first.
If you guys are interested, I'll review this too at some point. The big question still stands. Is Dimensions in Time canon? Does the Doctor live in an alternate version of our world since he travelled to watch this special alongside Noel Edmonds? My answer, does it matter? Given the amount of additions and retconning that's gone on in the past 6 decades, I'm not sure it's worth getting too worked up about the status of this special's canonicity. Who knows what the showrunners will decide or not decide in the future. So, did Dimensions in Time do its job? In the end, I think that it does serve as a good tribute to the classic show during a time where fans were short of official Who content. It features many actors from the show reprising their roles to face a common foe, with a wide variety of secondary foes to boot. The episode is decidedly cheesy and dated, and can come across as a bit overfilled, or that it's trying to do too much with what it has given the number of different characters we have running around. However, I can applaud the ambition of this special in paying homage to the fans of the show. Is Dimensions in Time worth watching for fans of Doctor Who or EastEnders? Given its brief runtime, Dimensions in Time is a light-hearted and easy watch. Fans of Doctor Who may enjoy spotting cameos and references to the show. However, if you're primarily an EastEnders fan, this special may not be worth your time, as its focus lies more with the Whoniverse. Well, that's all for this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and as always, thanks for watching.
The blue and green ones are my favourite kind, but I'll eat the coloured ones from time to time. Cause Polos is life, 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 Polos is life. Sleep all night and then Polos is life.